Oh, we're back, baby. What? It's the 23rd of July. Can you believe it? 9:35 p.m. currently. I'm Lockie, joined as always by Nick. And fuck, bro, the clever dummies are back, baby. We're back. We went on hiatus, but we've returned and we're coming back fucking strong, mate. How you been, buddy?
I've been good. I've been loving life. A lot has happened. So much to discuss. Let me take back what I just said. Where I said I've been loving life. A lot has happened. A lot since our last podcast. Let me tell you the exact date when our last episode aired. 4th of May was the last episode that went on, and so it's been a couple of months. Not to mention the fact that we've been getting a lot of responses. Well, like crazy amount of last I checked, we were I think I remember mentioning to you we were roughly 8,000 or 9,000 download or something like that.
Yeah, the numbers were good and they don't matter in themselves, but just people that we love and care about too, letting us know that they're liking it. I got a call from a guy who I hadn't seen in 5 years. I used to go to uni with him, Vinny, even 6 years, and he just said, man, you're doing good work. He works for Channel 9 right now, but he's just like, man, I like the podcast, keep it up. So yeah, that sort of shit is just cool, eh?
100%. And I've had I walked into different meetings, whatnot, over the past few months, and people, and they've just said, we should it's really good to get into podcasts. I'm like, well, hey, I've got a podcast. This is check it out, and it's been fantastic. So what I'm really trying to say, the reason why I brought that up is because I do love this podcast, and it's actually already given me a lot, despite the fact that chatting to you is great. It's given me a lot, and it's given us a lot, which is nice. So we need to keep going that. Talking about the podcast, as you can hear in the background, Lachlan, you've got some incredible big news.
Well, mate, she's just like her dad. She needed to get a word in early. Within the first 60 seconds, she's made a podcast debut. And that's obviously Abby Ann Inwood, my first daughter. She was born on the 14th of July at 9:17 p.m., mate. So technically it was 8 days ago, about 20 minutes ago. So anyway, I'm not counting. But no, it's just been incredible, bro. And like we've had we've had some good conversations, and it's kind of what sparked us, redoing this. And I wanted to do a podcast after her birth, and obviously I didn't want the gap to be that long, but at the end of the day, bro, we're back doing it, and this is my favorite part of the week when we're doing it, so I love it. And just her included into my life, it's just crazy because being a parent, it's like one of those obviously big life goal things, but you kind of don't know what to expect. And by the end of the pregnancy, obviously Charlotte was the one who was carrying the baby. I was sort of just so numb to it, I just didn't know how to feel. And then once the moment comes, and once the baby goes through whatever she has to go through to come out into this world, and you just experience her for the first time, and she's just real in front of your face. It just changes things, and it's already changed me. It's already changed my ability to prioritize things in my life within a couple of days. So that I felt that effect immediately. So the other things that are going to come along with it, including like the protective nature and, all that sort of stuff, I look forward to as well. But that's one thing I felt immediately is like everything, just is included with her, any life goals or aspirations or even just day-to-day things. So it's pretty amazing, bro. But, it's just great. It's just great, my dude. It's just hard to, sometimes it's hard to articulate. I was saying to you, it's hard to say exactly what it's like without telling people what happened and how she kind of came into the world and kind of going through everything like that. And that's stuff that's in itself. But we were just so blessed, and mate, she's a big girl. She's got loud set lungs. She's absolutely adorable. She looks so much like her mum, which I'm so happy for. I didn't want these big ears and big shiny teeth to come out. So far so good.
Well, look, I'm going to start with congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
That's a big. I mean, despite the fact that you Charlotte did all the work.
Exactly, and still is my dad. You are a dad. I'm just joking, but yeah, technically, the breastfed babies, it is what it is.
Look, congratulations. It's the reason I say congratulations, right? I have an analogy, and I know it must be hard to describe this in the words, and coming from someone who's got no idea of how having a kid would feel like, but I do have an analogy, right? So tell me if my analogy is completely out of the window, and then I'll shut up forever.
Yeah, go for it.
Right, here's my analogy, right? So do you remember back in the days when we used to play cricket, right? So
yep.
I remember going into training, heydays, right? Going into training with the big boys in the reps or grade cricket, right?
Oh.
So right? And the days you'd go into those cricket, right? Most of the time would be absolutely shit, right? But one day we'd go into cricket, all of a sudden, incredible cover drives start coming out, pull shots coming out. You're cracking them out of the, it's like you suck at on normal cricket field, and all of a sudden you're playing on turf, and people are really good, and all of a sudden you're smashing him. Yeah. How does that happen? Well, I think there's actually a science behind it. What happens is actually you raise the bar because you're playing with the big boys now. Automatically, your body is given, your brain knows that it has to perform better. And I think having a kid is kind of like that, because once you become a parent, once you know that there's no turning back, once that kid is there in the world, all of a sudden you raise your bar, man. You raise your bar, you become a whole new person. You raise your standard, you become the new you, and you're the person who all of a sudden saving money was hard for you, all of a sudden becomes easier because you have a why all of a sudden. What do you say to that? What do you think that analogy hits the park or not?
Yeah, no, absolutely it does. And at the end of the day, man, like the only difference between me and you right now is I have 8 days of experience being a dad, more than you. Apart from that, we're pretty much at the same level. So like you can still critically think about it pretty well, especially if you're switched on and you understand how the world works. But obviously, what you said was absolutely perfect. And going back to the cricket days, I'll wrap back to the analogy because it was really well put. But that was a funny thing because when we were playing cricket, I'd been playing for a bit over 10 years. You were probably 2 or 3 years. So in terms of kind of technique, I just had a more developed technical game because I'd just been doing it longer. But whenever we played with better players, or we went to those rep tryouts, grade tryouts, I should say, and we sort of performed or sort of tested ourselves against the better players. Like you pretty much outshone me every time, and that's just because when that moment came, like you just stood up and did it, and that's kind of shows kind of who you are as a person and why you would be a good dad in yourself, and that's exactly what it is. It's kind of like fight or flight too, and you can go and talk about kind of adrenaline and cortisol, your two hormones that are being heightened during those sort of moments. Like that's kind of what the experience is like with childbirth, and that's why it's so hard to explain. I also believe, like being a Christian myself, I also believe there's an element of God and there's an element of something we can't explain that's happening when someone's giving birth. It's something called the Holy Spirit, and it's hard to measure, but it's a feeling you get. As I said, cortisol and adrenaline have sort of been pointed to the things that are going through in your brain, but ultimately in sort of 101 health science, it's called fight or flight, or 101 psychology, fight or flight. And it's like when the moment comes, what are you going to do? Are you going to stand up and do what you need to, or are you going to hide away and give yourself excuses? So that's exactly what kind of parenting is, and that's exactly what we kind of experienced in that moment too, when we were sort of 17, 18, 19-year-old boys trying to make a go at life. And at that stage we love cricket, so our goals were to sort of play representative cricket, and it's the same sort of thing. You just obviously now you've got a little baby that just cries really loud and it hurts your ears, and you don't have any boobs so you can't feed it, but you also love it so much, but you're worried that you're going to break it, so you don't want to hold it. And there's so many things that go on at once. But bro, your analogy is 100%. It's just like with experience, you're able to kind of relate it a bit more.
It's absolutely brilliant, because the reason I thought of that analogy, right? I've held a fair few babies in my time, right? Held, right? Because holding a baby kind of feels like waiting for a ball, that feel of them when the bowler is running in, because you don't know if you're going to get out, right? You don't know if the ball's going to...
It's vulnerability, bro.
It's just a whole new experience, right? Like I'm if I'm being completely honest, like I'm not the person who's like extremely like has the mothery nature, right? But I get it. Like I have a younger sister. Seeing her grow up has been one of the most beautiful things, and it's realizing the fact that it's just one of those most incredible part of life. And if you're lucky enough to be part of that, whether it be if your child or whether it be your sibling or whether it be someone else's child that you just got to hold, I think it's something so incredible, because you hold in your hands a piece of the world, or whether, now once again, going back to whether people listening to it believe in God or not, right? You hold something so or something, well, right? Someone who has the power to change the world itself, right? Which is so incredible. And then you definitely don't want to be the person who ruins it, right?
Yeah, you don't want to be the one to drop it on its head.
That's exactly right, right? You don't want to be that person who drops the next Muhammad Ali on his head, or drop the next
right.
Nelson Mandela on his head.
Or you're playing in the Shield final, mate,
right?
down at Cronulla, and you're in second slip, and you drop the opening batsman, and he scores 100.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Right. So it's so much pressure, but it's kind of beautiful at the same time, because like you don't want to drop the next Nelson Mandela, you don't want to drop the catching the first slips, the dude goes on to make 100. It's kind of beautiful because you don't know what's going to happen, because and it's going to, at the end of the day, there's always, I do believe, and I suppose that's, whether once again, coming back to religion briefly, I do believe there's always a plan, and I think things always do work out for better. So I think most of the time it's fine, but it's just, as humans, we can't help but be fearful. I suppose that's what makes us human, isn't it?
Yeah, that's also the kind of the underlying message of what you see in the Bible, and particularly parables and passages and books that were written by people who either were directly in contact with Jesus or said they spoke to Jesus. Take that for what it is. Essentially, it's like a guideline for life, and you're not. The beautiful thing about the kind of the existence we have is we have a lot of freedoms, obviously depending on your circumstance, but you've got the ability to do almost anything at any time if you really think about what you can do. And you kind of just got to use those little guidelines and kind of just do your best, and that's why things just work out. If you're slugging away, if you're doing your best, things just start to fall together. Obviously, you're in your own way. You're kind of raising your business as like a little baby. There's nothing like the actual experience and the feeling you get when it's your own creation, but you can tap into it a little bit. I believe, like when you hold a child, or you have the position that you're in right now, where you're building a business and your entire life is put into this one thing, you can tap into that same emotion, and that feeling of like fight or flight brings it out. So that's kind of what I believe the Bible to be, and what the faith of Christianity is. I don't like to use the word Christianity because it's too broad, but what I believe it is ultimately just a way that we can live our lives, and a kind of a guided way that if you kind of do your best, then internally that internal thing that is your right or wrong, your conscience, like if you follow that thing, you're going to be okay. And that'll jump across to your relationships. That'll be in business, in friendships, in whatever it is.
100%. And I think you were on the mark there, right? I'm going to say two things. First thing I just want to quickly address, and I think there's a big, especially nowadays with what's happening in society, there's a big stigma to religion, right? The reason, and for some reason, religion seems outdated, right? The reason I want to address that is because I think most of the things that humans, as now that we're coming to today and we're saying, hey, these are the right things, religions have already addressed those. But I think people just have taken those things out of context and basically sometimes killed religion, because most religions have one thing in common, and that's coming from someone. I've actually recently been studying the Quran again, and I've read some of the Bible stuff, and I've read Bible verses. I've listened to books on on how Christianity works, and a lot, like looking into religion a lot. There's one common thing in every single religious literature, whether it be Bible, Quran, or Qatar, or whatever they call, right? Is the fact that treat everyone with respect, and fear, basically mediate your fear, and know that there's always a plan. Like you'll be fine.
Kind of
think
just
positive.
Basic 101 guides life in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah, and they're basic, and even to the fact, if you listen to Buddha's kind of philosophy, which is not really a religion, more of a philosophy. Even Buddha's philosophy has similar stuff, where basically talk about like take only what necessarily and all that stuff, right? And so that's religion on one side. So I think it's really important to remember that all those things have always been there, whether we as humans are realizing those now, right? That they're important. Now moving on to the next thing that
also, as you get older and you're able to understand it more, like as a kid, I just had a difficult time following it and too closely and believing in it a lot. Obviously, I just didn't understand it, and I didn't understand the practical elements it had in life. So once I kind of got that understanding, I saw it as a different thing and what it really is. And that's a little bit of a personal journey. And what you've said, you've gone back and you're looking at things too. I kind of felt a little bit that way as well. And it's really interesting, especially if you know a story or you might know something from when you were younger, and then you get reminded of it in this new context and a greater understanding. It's just like if you go back and rewatch The Simpsons, bro, you're going to get some jokes that you were like, what the hell? That's what they were saying. Like some filthy, like that's a really bad analogy right there. That's completely off the mark. But like it's just a greater understanding, and it's a beautiful thing because it reaffirms it even more strongly for me.
100%, because
something to lean
I mean,
on
religious
That's a bad analogy, bro. Such a bad analogy.
Look, it's fine. I think it's fine. Let's go with that. Let's roll with it. Let's roll with that. I just want to say, so much of the religious literature has been written in such metaphorical manners, because so it's timeless, right? Because if you write religious metaphor, right, religious literature in literal terms, what happens, it is not timeless, right? So for it to be timeless, it needs to be in a metaphorical terms, that it is subjective, and it is subjective to the observer or the reader, right?
When you're on your one trip a day to go and get water on an 8-mile walk, don't beat your partner over the head with a stick. Like you need to be yeah. So it needs to be in understanding when an emotion, for example, when an emotion of anger is brought out in you, how do you respond? Like, do you turn the other cheek, or do you react and do you counter with that? And that's a principle that's spoken about in the Bible and spoken about across the board too. And that's just sort of one example.
Exactly, and I think that's really important to remember. And one of the things that I find with, particularly, and not just with Islam, but many religions, is what I find is that certain people taking certain metaphorical teachings very literal and taking it out of context and turning it into weaponizing it, right? And that's where all the problems come from in religion, and that's where all the wars come from. But religion at its core is actually not like that, right? But and that's why the religion gets its bad name, right? Certain areas, the religion say, well,
just an extreme element that exists in a lot of different parts of society.
That's exactly right. And because it's so metaphorical, once taken out of context, it becomes completely different, right?
Yeah.
And this is very important. It becomes very dangerous. I actually posted a status about news actually doing that all the time, and one particular heading was
the news, my brother.
That was always the plan, wasn't it?
Yeah, good.
One particular heading that let me see if I can pull it up and read it out, right?
Yeah.
One particular, let me read this out to you, because I'm trying to give context here, because context is the important thing here.
Yeah,
right?
it is.
So
it is. We need to spoon feed these people.
Yeah. So it says, breaking news, live updates. Face masks to be mandatory for Melbourne, Mitchellshire, right? Victoria records 363 new COVID-19 cases, 3 deaths, single day global record, new infection broken. Single day global record for new infection broken. New South Wales community spread greater threat than Melbourne. Right? Well, you hear that shit, right? You go, what the fuck? Melbourne has broken the global record for the most infection in a single day? A global record for a city?
Yeah.
You ask yourself, you're like, what the hell? Who the hell is writing this thing, right? Because it's taken out of context. Technically, all the things they said were true. But put in a one sentence without any grammar, that becomes very dangerous, right?
Yeah,
very dangerous.
By definition, it changes the meaning of it.
It changes the definition. Basically what it's saying is that Melbourne recorded the highest ever cases globally. So that means, but you talk about America is recording 80,000 cases, roughly 80 or 70,000 cases a day.
You look over in India as well, just how populated some of their cities are. Kolkata, Mumbai, those sort of places. There's just so many people, and it's like, and then you get these dirty. What do you remember who it was? Was it the Telegraph or was it?
I don't feel like getting the Climate News podcast soon. Yeah, but remember the radio rules, right?
Yeah, no such thing.
No, But the point is, taken out of context, things can be very dangerous. And I've spoken a lot about this, and a lot of people actually go, well, hey, it's actually not that bad. No, it's actually really bad, because, you tell people that, you give someone a paragraph from the Quran and go, hey, the Quran says, do X, right? Taken out of context, you go, hey, like Muslims do this. No, they fucking don't. You don't know what the context of that is. Same thing goes with, Christianity. Same thing goes with any of the religions. They talk about, Buddha lived on 1 grain of rice a day. No, he did not. It's just a fucking metaphor. That's the whole idea of the things, and people don't listen to realize, take things out of context becomes a huge problem. Now, just quickly reverting back to what we were talking about before about having a baby. I just want to quickly
the bold fight, the fucking ADD podcast episode 13, sponsored by Adderall. Nah, just joking. It was just happy to be back, baby.
Well, exactly. Excited to be back. There's so much to unpack, right? And this just gonna quickly plug this, and then I'm gonna move on to the next thing. What I was going to say, talking about a baby, right? I've been working on this project, which is a brand new venture, right? And something completely, I've never done this before. And, and I'm actually pouring a lot of money into it as well, right? Like money, my bank accounts are getting drained, right now. And this is a new venture, and I'm very excited about it. But every day I have to, I'm spending, X amount of hours in it. And I'm spending that time and money in a time that is very unprecedented for everyone else. Everyone is scared. Everyone's worried about money. Obviously, there's a level of optimism that lays in me, right? That I think that tomorrow is going to be better. Hence why I'm doing this, right? If I didn't think tomorrow was going to be better, I wouldn't be doing this. But I'm starting this. It's a new company. It's called Bombay Box, which is it's basically selling, it sells products, it sells alternate products, whether it be bracelets and those kind of stuff, and mostly focused on men, but selling things like bracelets, because I like wearing bracelets, and a lot of the stigma around, around like how men are meant to be, all of a sudden if I wear rings, it's like, men don't wear, or whatever, right? So there's a whole mass idea behind it. So I've been creating this.
Do you want to wait to talk about it a bit more?
I'll wait to talk about it.
Yeah, sweet.
I'll wait to talk about it. What I wanted to say was, right, every single day I'm very excited, but every single day I'm really worried that every cent that I'm spending could just go to waste, right? And the fear is always there, and I'm just like, I'm not sure, it's like if I'm doing the right thing. And I guess you're right, it's kind of like raising a baby, because you don't know what's going to happen. Like, are you making a mistake, or are you not making a mistake? Are you doing the right thing or the wrong thing? Is the whole thing a mistake? Are you even worth it,
Yeah, Zero as well, obviously Zero Media, same kind of thing. Yeah. But I mean, it's the same thing where every decision, everything I'm doing is, there's no one else. You've got Terrence, and you've got a small group of people who are going to help you. But ultimately, you're kind of the captain of the ship in a lot of ways. So it's like, what am I going to do in this situation? And you just got to keep trying, because everyone's going through, kind of a first in human history in a lot of ways. We've had similar things, and we've had recessions and wars, but this has a different feel to it just because of the modern world, and we're living in the modern world, and so many things that we took for advantage, how a lot of those can be taken away. It's kind of the blessing of being alive now, and kind of a little bit of the curse too. But what is it in you that drives you to keep doing that? You just know that you need to fulfill your potential. You just need to live a life where you're trying your best at kind of whatever you're doing.
Well, that's the thing, right? I don't know, right? And I think that's to be completely honest, I think that's okay. I don't know what tomorrow will be, right?
Yeah.
But I just feel like, I mean, there's two options, right? To be nihilistic and sit here, there's no point to anything, right? And I will never be, read the stats, how every millennial would never, no millennial will make it, right? Read the stats. The thing is, all those stats and all those probabilities are probably right, corrected stats. But I call me old-fashioned, I still do believe in miracles, or the exception to the rule. I don't know whether that's a good way to think or not, but I've always seen myself as an exception to the rule. I've never been left wing or right wing. I've always just thought I'm an exception to the rule, right? I pick what I relate with, right?
Yeah, it doesn't matter. You just look at it objectively, and you look at it kind of in third person in a lot of ways, and you just try to look at or at least what I do is I try to look at both perspectives, and then I kind of side with, in a sense, or I formulate my opinion on the side that I agree with the most, or the whatever it is. It doesn't even have to be a side. See, that's kind of the problem, right? We're kind of making
that's exactly
team. It's like a team game. It doesn't need to be. It's all one human race. Like
that's exactly right, and that's the problem. And I don't know. I don't know if any of this is going to work. I don't know if I'm wasting my time and I'm better off just working a nice job and buying a house and just, having few kids. And I'm sure I want to do that as well. See if that works out. Obviously I can't control some of the stuff, but this I can. There's two options. I mean, I could be nihilistic and just go, hey, like nothing's going to worthwhile. So let me just pursue what I know. But I kind of like the idea of pursuing the unknown because I don't know what's going to happen. But I know if I can do this, maybe there's a chance something better could happen, right? And something better for the humankind, not just me. And I kind of feel proud in myself. I feel pride in doing so. And whether a lot of people agree or not, I find pride in myself to doing so, that I'm doing something that could possibly benefit the humankind. Because there's so many people who aim to benefit the humankind very passively, and that's when you see a lot of protest and quite use some of the useless stuff. I'm not saying protests are fine. Yeah, protests are great.
I mean, with 90% of cases, we're not sure. We're not sure where they're from. There was a protest a few weeks ago, but no, we're not going to say that.
No, that's a whole other level. But what I'm saying is like that's not what I had in mind. But I'm saying like there's a lot of different passive ways to change the world, right?
But that's kind of like the media's. That's kind of, I guess, looping it back to the media a little bit and how they can.
But like my thing has always been like when you start like basically there's two ways to do something, right? One of the ways is, let's say as a kid, let's go back to as a kid analogy. You're a kid, there's two ways to get something, right? One, you jump up and down, whinge, and you get something. The second is you find a way to get it. You find a way or you invent something. I've always been more of an inventor. I've never been the kind of person who jumps up and down and hopes if I cry long enough, I'll get something. Personally, but or once protest. Again, I don't necessarily want to say that's all wrong either.
That's not. I don't want to. That's the thing about it. That's again the problem. That the 5-10% that's affecting the vast majority of the great. Yeah.
And I think some of it is such a great, beautiful work, and I do appreciate that because I really do appreciate it. But obviously the point is there's two different people need to be, because the world isn't going to change itself. There's two kind of people need to doing it. I guess take the kid analogy. There needs to be a kid who's jumping up and down to asking for it. There needs to be another kid who's also
going against the grain.
Against the grain. So there needs to be, and I think both are valid, and they can't be.
You need that in the society. Wrong. That's the beautiful thing about the kind of the society that we're lucky enough to live in here in Australia. Is you have that opportunity to voice your opinion and go whatever way you want.
100%, and that sort of goes in line with what's been so much happening right now. It's insane. I mean, I know everyone keeps saying this is the first, like nothing like this has ever existed, and I mean this. I just want to touch on that because I feel like, of course, that's true because we always move forward in time. I don't think there was anything like the Second World War, despite the fact there was the First World War. The Second World War was nothing like the First World because we moved forward in time. It was once upon a time in the time, and nothing like that will ever exist again, right? We could face another pandemic identical to this, but the way we'll deal with it will be completely different. So that would be the only time we would have experienced that. So I think everything is completely new. So this pandemic is probably, something that's so alien to us because none of us ever experienced it. And as I said, despite the fact, even if there's been pandemics before and there's been things like the Spanish flu, things like that before, But times have changed, right? Things have changed, and we have more technology to deal with. We have all these different, whether for good or bad, it doesn't matter which side. Once again, then it depends on if you wear a mask or not. If you're a fucking idiot who doesn't say that I'm not going to wear a mask, then anyway, that's beside the point.
Particularly if it's you're going to get fined. No one wants to pay $200.
Yeah, if you're a fucking idiot who doesn't wear a mask. Anyway, the point is, the point is, all of a sudden, these people have opinions, right? The people who are saying they're not going to wear a mask, they have an opinion. Take back the Spanish flu. If they didn't wear a mask, they would be in a prison somewhere, right? Because that's how the democracy wasn't as liberating as it is today.
Yeah, it's probably happened in certain countries, I'd say. This, Russia, potentially. These countries that have China, you'd imagine, countries that have a stronghold on their kind of citizens and, through their policies and through their political system, that would be the case. So, yeah, you've got to count your blessings as much as you can, because it helps you see through a lot of the shit and helps to take a lot of the emotions out of it in a funny way. Like when you sit on the negative for too long, it'll jag you. It'll jag you.
100%. And you're talking about the negative, which kind of brings me another thing that I wanted to talk about was I've been pretty. This is maybe if this has something to do with us not doing the podcast for a few months, is this. I'm going to be completely honest. At the beginning of this pandemic, I was very positive. I was like, I'm going to stay positive. I'm going to stay positive. I'm going to stay positive. And I did, despite the fact I'm still positive, and I stayed positive throughout the whole thing. I did kind of start losing the flame and the fire, and I start sort of falling into the mundanism, if I should call it.
Yeah, definitely.
And
guilty.
It's just, the days just sort of started blending, and I stopped controlling what I did in my day, and my day kind of controlled what I did, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I still did certain things, but I sort of, for a bit, I would almost say especially for a month, things sort of started kind of like just being like my days controlled me is the best way to put it, instead of me controlling my days. And my scheduling, I think I remember saying that in my last podcast, like last time we did, I was like scheduling my days to the T of like doing exactly. No, I sort of fell out of that to the point. It's really funny because you can see where you go wrong, where you start falling out. I stopped making my bed. I stopped hanging my clothes. My room sort of piled up with my clothes. I forget.
The old Jordan Peterson 101s, eh? 100% guilty as the stuff that we had got on top of, whatever context in your life, there's things that you've gotten on top of, and then in this situation, and guess what happened when those sort of things fell back? Like you just started to slip a little bit, right? Like it's kind of a little bit of a reminder in some ways of how fucking precious and vulnerable we are as human beings.
100%.
There, but that's one thing it's taught me for sure.
Yeah, and last week, and I spoke to my mom and dad, and my mom actually first, and I said, Mom, I'm really annoyed because actually what happened was, I'm just going to quickly rail back here, right? So I was feeling a little bit like, the whole pandemic ended. I was like going back to the gym, and I was ecstatic. Like I was so excited. I was like, this is the best thing that's ever happened, right? Going back to the gym, I was so excited. And then that lasted about, I think it was literally a week and a half, and then we went back into lockdown again, right?
Yep.
Or maybe 2 weeks, right?
Yeah, being in Melbourne, man, in Australia, it's definitely the hardest place to be for sure, within Australia, obviously.
Yeah, and we went back into lockdown. So I think when we obviously I was very done with the lockdown, and I wanted to go back to the gym, and I wanted to meet people. I was excited. So once the lockdown ended, and I was really excited to be back in life, right? I was meeting people, I was going to the gym, so that's why we didn't do the podcast. Before that, I was not making my bed, not doing anything. But in the middle, there was a 2 weeks of spark. I was excited.
And there's one of those things, man. Maybe we felt like we were going to do it, and we were not going to do it to the best of our ability, and we were going to regret doing that. So we were kind of saving it in our own mind, and that's perfectly understandable. I've got a kind of a point to mention about what you're saying, but I want you to finish because you're hitting a good spot here.
Sounds good. And then for the week, I was very excited. I was going to the gym. I was like, and man, like I'm telling you, like when your energy levels go up, my energy levels went up on the 2 weeks that we were open, going back to the gym. I'm talking about back to, I don't know,
if you left high school for the first time, bro.
Yeah. If you don't know me, I generally have very high energy to the point where I'm bouncing off walls without coffee in the morning,
that's right?
And then that was me probably times 4. I was like, and the crazy thing is my new projects were coming up. I picked up these new jobs and like, it was exciting, most exciting 2 weeks. And then bam, back into the lockdown. And first day I was like, oh, this is going to be so shit. And that's when I didn't make my bed. I was just like, felt nihilistic. And I called my mom and I said, and thing is, I barely ever admit to my mom if I'm feeling shit. And the reason behind it is probably because I don't normally feel shit. I called out my mom. I was like, "Oh, I feel like shit. I hate the lockdown."
It's a good point. I feel the same way. It's like you don't want to pass it on to them. I know we're both thankful in a lot of ways of how we were raised and the love we were shown. So for me, I kind of have like this kind of almost false sense, like I don't, we could learn so much off our parents even to this day that we don't realize, but we kind of tell ourselves that, I don't want to put a pretty face on and tell them everything's good and make them proud of me, sort of thing.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that most of the time it is because we can manage it, right? And it's fine.
Definitely,
and then I was like, man, this is, yeah. So, and there's no point burdening them. So I was like, this time I was like, I was like, Mom, I feel like fucking shit. I hate this whole, I want to go to the gym, And she goes, and then she told Dad, she's like, oh, Nick's not feeling great.
Oh,
and Dad called me, he's like, what's happening? And then Dad makes the dad jokes. And then, you kind of feel better, which is kind of nice.
Yeah.
And then, so what I'm trying to get at is like, this is, and on top of that, with everything going on, and I've been trying to stay quiet without making political statements, because who am I to make the political statements? And I've been seeing so many people with opinions, and I've learned something new in this nihilistic time of mine, is the fact that opinions are so useless, because no one person agrees with them, and if you become defensive about your opinion, you will never actually hear the other person. And I feel like two people walk away in a conversation where you're basically just telling rubbing other person with your opinion. You're no better when you walk away from that conversation, so you want to hear other people out. So I made a commitment to myself from this nihilistic time that I've been in, that I'm going to from now on be a little bit of a different Anik who actually doesn't actually have an opinion and has no emotional attachment to my opinion. So I need to hear other people out, because I may be wrong. Because people who have been wrong and tell me their opinion are absolutely like, I have no remorse for them. It's because the way they're going about it. So if I've been doing the same thing, then I'm no better than them. So I want to be better. So I'm going to be better. Anyway, that was my whole point. So this is why we haven't, at least this is why I've been guilty, just trying to battle it out. But now I'm coming back strong. I've even booked a dentist appointment.
Yes, good man.
Get my life together.
Yeah, sort some shit out, eh?
I washed my bed sheet. I made my bed. And you can hear I sound excited, despite the fact we got another 4 weeks of lockdown here in Melbourne. But anyway, that's where we are.
Yeah.
What was your point, Locke?
Your opinion is not a marriage. Like, sorry, you're not in love. You're not married to your opinion, so you should be willing to move and adapt and change. It's gonna. It benefited me already, and it's something I need to remind myself of. But yeah, you just need to be able to adapt and change.
100%. And I feel like Lachlan, you and I know this very well, because we're pretty self-aware. You and I have always been really emotionally attached to our opinions.
Yeah, definitely.
Despite the fact that we're quite aware of what we say, but we still have an emotional attachment with our opinions. And I really want to hear other people out, despite the fact that some of them may be absolutely useless. But I want to hear them out, because if I'm not hearing them out, I'm no different than them.
Yeah, you're no better. That's right. That's the harsh reality, but that's the truth, right? 100%. And man, like, you don't have to be too. You're going to process. If you felt like you've let yourself down with whatever you have or haven't been doing through this time, I certainly feel the same way. But as you mentioned before, man, even the smartest thinkers and the best minds in the world struggle to deal with what we're going through right now. You can argue that they've done a lot worse than we have. So it's kind of our way of going through everything. And I mean, we can certainly. It's definitely definitely going to be a time we look back on and think about how we felt and how we could have done things better or worse. But if there's just any solitude in knowing that this is our first time doing anything. So when have you ever done anything for the first time and done well and felt kind of proud of yourself and like, oh man, that was great. Like you kind of got to learn and chip away. So it's just good. Yeah, it's just great that we're self-aware enough that we can, we're willing to do that. So it's just fucking get back on track like we are doing, and we'll be okay. Hold ourselves accountable, all that good stuff, and yeah, we got nothing to worry about.
And 100%, and that's another thing about. I've recently read this beautiful book. It's by Peter Thiel, the guy who founded Amazon with Elon Musk. He wrote this book called 0 to 1, and he talks about optimism and people who are into a nihilistic nature, or people who are into people who are not so optimist, right? They talk about, so as an optimist, right, there's two kind of optimists. Obviously, there's an optimist person who just thinks tomorrow is going to be better despite the fact that they do nothing to make it better, right? If you're that kind of person, the chances are you're a fool, right? Like that's a fact, right? That's a fact. But if you're an optimist who actually does something today because in hopes that tomorrow will be better, and you do something about it, then your chances are, once again, this is my opinion. So, I may change this, but today I feel like I'm the person who, or in Lachlan, same with you, right? Despite the fact that we, there's obviously we have optimism for tomorrow, that tomorrow is going to exist in this crazy time. That's why we are talking with such excitement on a podcast. Otherwise we'd be like, well, shit's going down, we're all gonna go die. You know what I mean? Right? So we're doing something in hopes of making tomorrow better. We're taking this into our own hands. So that's what's happening. I mean, everything makes different. The ocean was formed by a drop at a time, or whatever they call it, right? So maybe this podcast is exactly what will change the next. Who knows, right? The point is, that's what optimism is for. But optimism without action is kind of useless as well, because that just means you're hoping without any. It's like saying, there was something really funny that I saw. It was actually kind of about religion, which is really relevant to it, about this podcast, that because we've been talking about that. It was there's two kind of people. One person who works hard and goes, I'm thankful for what I have. The other person who sits at home goes, well, let the Lord shall provide. Well, no, that's not how it kind of works. You still have to work for it, but having the ability to work for it is what you need to be thankful for.
Yeah, that's the optimism. That's the being grateful element, and not letting it soften you in the sense like everything's okay, but yeah, using it right. It's like the optimism is like the motivation. It's kind of fuel and it gets you going and it keeps you going. But you need to stick with. That's where the discipline will come in and help you stick with it, because you're going to go through the ebbs and flows just like we are now. You're going to have your bad weeks and good weeks, and our lives are compromised. But yeah, as long as you stay in the race, and as long as you keep trying, you'll bloody. And I've said this multiple times on this podcast without doubt. So it's just applying that bloody knowledge we already know of, right? And it's just like anything, man. When you're trying to like analyze something, you've got to look at it from both perspectives. You've got to kind of be harsh on yourself and also be easy on yourself too, and look at why you didn't do things. And I'm going to segue now into kind of the topic of the day that we sort of been dabbling around. We didn't really get into, which is the media. We know we've got to hit this out of the park, and I think this might see us through that mighty hour we love to see. So we'll see how we go. But I've sort of took that approach to it, and I sat back and I thought about kind of what the media is and what it has been and what it is now. And growing up, even only 10 or 15 years ago when I was in the education system and further back, particularly before the turn of the century, and we had obviously the massive rise of the internet, like the role that the media had was kind of that mediator, that middle person in life, kind of the representative for the people, but also for used very much as a political tool for politicians and people in leadership. And it was predominantly, particularly where we are, used for good. There's plenty of examples where it's, again, particularly in wartime or any other time, it's been used for a negative. But we always kind of respected the figureheads that was the media, because they were there to kind of keep everyone in line. And as technology and the business of media shifted, even that article that you read right at the start of the podcast, which to this day I still laugh at, is just so ridiculous. No one's going through and critically analysing that, because they've just got to shoot out so much content. And they've shifted their business model over now where they're not just making money off being good people and going around and asking the right questions. They've got to be flamboyant. They've got to be controversial. At least they perceive that anyway. Funny enough, the most popular people in the podcast sphere and people that are sort of making more money now than even the big dogs in, those sort of big channels, people just don't want that sort of skewed way, but that's sort of the way they've shifted. So I don't think I certainly don't want the media to go away, because then it's just bloody a free roaming kind of town, but and it's just not good for anyone. But I guess I want your opinion on it as well, because you're so deeply immersed in it, and you have a great understanding of digital media and marketing and how it's meant to be used and how it can be used. Is it time for us to kind of reevaluate the role that we play on media in society, and do we, it kind of will help in a lot of senses? I don't know. There still seems to be a lot of people that seem to respect what they're hearing, and that sort of formulates a lot of decision making and people's opinion about particularly what's going on with this circumstance. So we've known it's been going on for a while. Do you think it's probably time that we reevaluate that and kind of look at that role in society? It's a hard question to answer, because you might have already skipped past that stage and maybe you've let them go. I don't know.
I think there's a multiple levels to that question. I think if you look at media itself, right? The media, what you said was absolutely bang on the mark. Media were the people, one of us. They were the one who were going to war, and they were heroes once upon a time. They were heroes because they were going to wars to just tell us how our loved ones were doing there, right? How was Australia doing? How was, war is not good, but at the time we thought war was good, right? Because that's how we just...
It was a necessary evil in a
necessary
lot of ways,
evil, right? Well, that's how we process things, and regardless of whatever it was, right? We thought it was good at the time. And whatever it may be now, we saw those people as heroes, right? So what they came a point when being a person who, was in the media or the press, you were the agent of truth, right? Truth. And you, Lachlan, you studied media at university.
We saw it. We saw that sort of young optimism, that passion that we kind of had first entering the field too.
That's exactly what I was about to say. I remember going to uni when being with the students, and they were so excited about their truth. They were excited about what is to bring. They wanted to be the people who fight, right? They wanted to fight for justice, because that's what media has always been. They've been voice of the people, so hence fighting for justice, right? Where the problem came in was when the internet came around, right? The internet came around because for a very long time, basically, let's call it, media or news media particular, right, was worked off two kind of levels, right? They did basically advertisement, and they made a lot of money off advertisement for very small, even running like one advert for Coca-Cola, and they got millions, right? And obviously more channels popped up, so there was more competition, and slowly that kind of, that just became bigger and bigger. So there was more channels, and then internet. Once the internet came around, news lost its value in a sense where it lost that capitalism, that the money it had, the capital it had to be able to do that, to tell the truth in a ethical manner, right? And it's really funny. In business, we talk about it, said, Google has the opportunity to be ethical where small companies don't, which is really interesting, because the small companies is the one that get done for being unethical. It's kind of really funny. But, so it's like when you have the capital, the resources and the personnel, you are ethical. But once you don't, right? Once you go into this realm of trying to basically, there's a saying that goes, you're like hand to mouth kind of thing, where you're just basically barely scraping and surviving, right? Is once you become that is the issue, because then it's all about, because, what if you don't get the article out right now? Because what if ABC gets it out, if you're Channel 9? What about, someone else gets it out, but then you were the last, and then you'd get the less clicks on your thing. And so there's so many, and then they all of that becomes relevant. So they end up basically posting things with going public with things that is, inundated with spelling mistakes and grammar mistake, and it's actually, some of it is not even factually correct. Now news, like, I know that news has always has carried certain level of opinion, but news is more, but that's what's actually called opinion journalism, or it's called opinion journalism or something. There's a name for it, right?
Yeah, it's an opinion piece, but there's a
it's analytical journalism.
Non-research type stuff.
It's basically saying what I think about it, right? That's what it is. And we had studied about that in uni. There was a unit for it. I can't remember what it was called, but I think it was something along with something like critical thinking, where basically we're asked to think about we get to say it kind of factually, but still sort of say what I feel about it.
Yeah. So, if you're a journalist who's in a war zone, or you're immersed so deeply in something that it's your job, it kind of becomes a part of your life, and you're able to formulate an opinion based off facts and experiences, which everything is kind of based off. You're able to position that, and that's kind of where that authority came from. That was kind of the leveling of it, and why the trust was there, I guess, and that was their role, really. Yeah.
Exactly. And now going back to the internet, now that you have Facebook, who people can instantly actually advertise their own business. So all of a sudden, Coca-Cola doesn't need the news media to advertise them, or Coca-Cola doesn't need it. Microsoft doesn't need them. When was the last time you seen an ad for Microsoft on your TV? Just let me ask you this, right? Because that will answer the question, because those are the big boys. That's where the money came from, right? That's when Apple had a TV ad, a TVC, right? TV commercial. Now they don't. So where are the news making money from? They're making money from, so they have to sell more ads for cheaper, and, they have to get more out there, because more clicks they get, more money they can, more they can monetize. And so they're really just kind of trying to swim without knowing how to swim kind of situation, because they're freaking out. Like, they're really freaking out. So that's why it's like, when you're talking about going back to cricket, right? It's like when you, when your partner makes you run 3 instead of 2, right? And then next ball, you're like frazzled, right? You're frazzled, and you're trying to face the ball. You're like, oh, what the fuck am I gonna do? Because that's when the highest chances are you're gonna get out, because you're already just frazzled, and you're surprised, and on top of that you're gasping for air. If you did all the runs, you would have been fine, but you didn't. So that's why you're there, right? So in that sense, that's why they have to do things like that, and they have to clickbait people. They have to say things, and at the end of the day, one of the things that media uses this, once again, there's so many levels to this, so I can't just say it without actually analyzing it. So one of the things media uses is fear. Everyone knows, so as humans have in their DNA to basically be more responsive to fear, because what fear is a mechanism to keep us alive, if you really think about it, right? Fear is a mechanism to keep us alive. The fear of touching fire. There's the reason why you don't touch fire is because you'll burn yourself. That's why you have fear of fire, burning yourself. So fear is internally driven. It's actually very beneficial. It keeps you alive, right? Otherwise, you'll just step into the train, in front of the train, and you'll be like, yeah, I don't care, so it's really, but media utilizes that and actually, uses it to put things in front of you, because if one of the articles scares you more than the next article, you'll read the one that scares you more, right? Because you want to know
that's
what
the one
they
you'll
have.
definitely remember as well. You're more likely to share it, tell a friend, and that's more people looking at it.
That's exactly right, and then on top of that is the fact that media is using that, and then on top of that, media is always gotta remember, they also think about their longevity, right? So keep in mind, they have to support the machine or the capitalist system. So many things that media actually says is in terms of supporting the capitalist system. Let me give you a small example. A while ago, and this is now I'm talking about media in a sense where movies and news and everything, right? There's a while ago, there was a big push, and so basically, whole bunch of big retailers came together. So let's just call them the David Jones of the world and the Myers of the world, right? Not particularly those companies, but those kinds of big companies, right? They came together and they said, we have a problem, right? They said, what's the problem? The problem is that women buy the latest clothing, the latest lipstick, they buy hair products, and they're buying all these things. But men aren't buying anything. The men buy one pair of jeans and they wear it for like 44 years. And such a huge problem to our capitalist system, right? Because that's what
so true.
Right, parent. That's what our dads did, right? Our dads wore a jean, and he had that jeans from 1977 and still wore it till 1999.
Yeah.
Still got him on, because that's how the problem was, right? They were like, well, they're not buying that, right? They're not buying more, and on one occasion, maybe they'll buy a new shirt if they feel lucky. Otherwise, they'll keep on the same one, and they weren't even getting a haircut, let alone anything else. They had long hair because they're like, well, that's cool, they weren't even getting a haircut. So they're like, okay, well, we need them to get to the buy, because literally 50% of our customer base is only buying the item once. And if you work in retail and you understand how important it is to have, how important it is to
sales,
have return
constant
buyers,
money flow.
constant money flow. So they said, well, what can we do? Well, one of the solutions, well, let's drop the quality of the item so people have to buy it again. All right, well, cool, that's cool. But that's still not stopping from people from just fixing it, right? Because that was the first thing they did, is like, let's drop the quality of it. Then people just kept on fixing it, right? I was like, okay, well, we need to come up with something else. So then they introduced the what call is a modern attractive man, right? The modern attractive man was a lot more feminine compared to the previous attractive man. The modern attractive man, or the symbol of sex, symbol that a person that symbolized attraction or the masculinity, was a lot more feminine, to be feminine. So that means a person who all of a sudden wore skinny jeans and wore hair products and went to the gym and looked after his skin and shaved and had clean haircuts and adapt a lot more of the feature of the feminine kind of the time, right? Once again, these things are not particularly particular to a gender, but what I'm saying is why they came in that time, right? So they said, okay, well, we have to support. So all of a sudden, so it was like, how do we get that message across? Well, clearly there's only one way to do it, through movies and advertisements. So in movies, all of a sudden, if you notice, there's actually if you actually go back on movies, you'll be able to see this very clearly. It all changes in around 1999, 98 to 99. That's when it changes. You'll see all of a sudden people who looked slimmer and people who had more, blue eyes, people who had more like, more feminine features, like softer features, became more predominant in movies.
Yeah, there was like always your James Bonds and the sex symbol, but they were generally pretty rugged and rough and kind of matured type people. Those type of guys that would wear a pair of jeans to death and not buy a new one, for a little while. And a shift and a focus, and it was almost created. They almost created a different, a person that we, much more, assimilate with compared to the older generation. So it's not that we're bad mouthing it in any what way or another, but that's kind of the power, and that's how, Christmas in itself, Valentine's Day, like these cultural things that we celebrate in society, were all manufactured through marketing tools. And that's kind of what media's shifted to, right? Like it's just become so because it's needed to, obviously, because it needs to survive, but it's shifted the main focus, I feel, in a lot of ways.
That's exactly right. Some very strong people realized what the power of the media was, and they started utilizing it.
There's a lot of psychology that goes on with it, and just understanding what people like and playing on people's fears, and even what people, everything, every emotion, really.
So much psychology, and going back to this correct example that I was using, and actually, I looked in deeply into it. So this is like the one they got together the smartest psychologists. They got some of the best of the team together to actually develop this program. There was actually, I think it's still there. It's like a big cohesion of these advertisement companies and retail companies. I forget what it's called. It's based out of England, but it's a company. It's a company that work on these kind of items, like basically to work out new technology. Dare I say, like to advertise, right? How to sell things. And if you realize, what we've always looked up to is always been the people who are on TV or famous, right? We've always seen the people who well known as, because that's what it goes back down to, human needs of like being basic human psychological needs are like, being in need to be more have that value. What is it called? Have that have some quantifiable value in the world is what we all aim for. So we listen to the people who have a quantifiable value, and it's called it's also like a group thing as well. That's why you find if you're a dude or a girl, right? You find if you're a girl and you're in a relationship, you'll find a lot more guys hit on you. And same thing if you're a guy in a relationship, and same, it doesn't matter what kind of relationship you're in. If you're in a relationship, you'll find you'll get a lot more people basically, giving you, like, throwing themselves at you because you're unavailable, because scarcity, right? So we've always been in this thing. There's two levels to it. One is scarcity. Second one is because it's already proven that you're a good partner. So, why would I? It's called social. What is it called? It's called social proof. Social proof. That's what it's called. So it's social proof. So I don't need to know. I already know. Well, if you have let's say if I'm a girl, I already know you have a girlfriend, so you're not a serial killer. So that's fine. I can just go for you, right? That's how the human brain works. And that's why we look up to people who are famous, because we're like, well, everyone's looking up to them. That's why we must do exactly what they're doing in order to become famous. Then everyone will look up to us, and we'll get all the girls and all the boys. And that's how our brain works, right? And that's what media utilizes that to put us into this weird situation where we end up giving into such things of whether become a I mean, or whether it be good for a bad, right? Whether it was a good thing for us to become more feminine. Maybe it was a good thing. And I think there's actually a nice thing about being a little bit more in touch with your feminine side, because you can understand your feminine partner better, right? Or the feminine side better, right? So it's nice to take care of your teeth. Plus, it's nice to look
Most
nice.
definitely,
right?
yeah,
Right?
exactly.
So all these things matter.
That's a serious point to it as well. Like, it's not just the quality a man's dropped, and look at compare the type of person, but the amount of things. Like, it's evolution in the best way possible, because people have needed now to adapt that to survive and kind of fit the mold of social proof, which is kind of in a sense, obviously, as you mentioned, mimicking and following what other people do, or creating something, and then allowing other people to dream. Or, if you see remember the old, what was that, Old Spice body wash ad, like just having someone like that at the forefront and people wanting to copy. And it's I guess it's the same with sport. Like, if you're selling a supplement, you're going to get LeBron James. You're going to get a high-paying athlete. You're not going to get some bloke who's been tested positive for cocaine 3 times and he's just got out of jail. You're not going to get him to formulate it. So it's a dirty old. And social proof is a good little term there too, because it's so prominent throughout society, not just in what we are going through now, but everything. Like, what are people doing? Like, what's the next thing to come up? And the media, it's just another thing the media are using so well, isn't it?
100%. Anyway, so basically, hopefully that kind of covers it. That's a big rant about media.
It was.
What I read,
man. It's unpacking it, isn't it? Yeah.
Because I don't want to say something and just seem like I'm just saying it because I just hate the media, right?
Yeah,
I don't hate the media. I'm part of the media. Like, I work in this industry. I understand the value of clickbait and all that stuff. But what I'm saying is, the problem is when that's being done in a crisis for basically capitalizing on something in people's pain is kind of sad, at least into my values. I don't know, maybe it's not in other people's values.
Yeah, obviously not, because it's such a big part of the business, isn't it? But it would be something that, it's like the old question, if, you're offered $1 million, what would you do? And obviously that's a question you can only answer when you go through the experience, but you just hope that, and it's obviously people that have the position in power and social influence, like it's a business. So you've also got to be able to educate yourself and other people on it too. And that's kind of what we're doing now. And when we are going through what we're thinking about, like, we're coming back at each other and we're opening up the conversation, because it needs to be done. And, I guess when you've only got 4 minutes on TV to talk about the protest and you've got to get in as much as you can, well, you're not going to go through it all. So that's kind of why we feel we need to go through kind of everything we do on here. But it's the way that I think the reason why both you and I process things, I think, pretty well compared to the average person, certainly of our age too. We have a pretty good understanding of even the things we don't know about because we're able to look at things that way. So maybe we can all take a little bit more of that. And I've learned that off watching other people and looking and learning off other people. I'm sure you're the same. Like, it's just about not being married to one idea, I guess, and being open, willing to evolve and change. And I certainly feel I've been affected by COVID, but I feel like if it was a few years ago, I feel like it might have jagged me a lot worse. So, hey, that's probably one good way to look at it too.
100%, and each day we become stronger. And and I say this like this is a normal thing, and which is really funny because COVID-19 has taught me a lot. One of the things that it taught me, which funny enough, our politicians keep on saying use common sense. I realize it's a big assumption saying that everyone's got common sense. Unfortunately, people don't. And I've been seeing a lot of conspiracy theories jumping up and down, like boiling eggs in a saucepan. Basically, it's really interesting because they believe in something so speculative, and they believe it with all their heart. Like maybe I just wonder sometimes. I was like, it's important to it's important to know facts, right? It's really important to be self-aware of why you believe in something that you believe in. Where did it come from, right? Did it come from a credible source? Did you watch a YouTube video from a channel
definitely.
called 6900 Illuminati cracked, right? Or
Code 1.
Cracked code 1, right? Where is that knowledge coming from? Is that knowledge? Yeah. A lot of the time you'll find things are very logical. The life is logical, right? So when you really think about it, when you get to the bottom of actually talking about that, right? WikiLeaks just dropped so much of their whole bunch of all their files over the years, which is really funny. But talking in general, right? Chances are there's no real super conspiracy to end the world of this one person who is doing things, because the reason I say that is because there's no chances, or there's few less, very little chances, is because humans are probably, how do I put this? Like, we can't keep a secret for shit.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly.
We can't keep a secret for shit, and it comes out very quickly, right? Especially nowadays with all this technology, every kid, every man and their dog can hack something, right? So it's pretty improbable that there's a grand plan from this grand master who's trying to end the world and trying to claim all the money or something like that, and trying to sleep with all the women and trying to turn every man gay. I feel like there's very few chances, someone was saying how we dealt with COVID-19 really bad, and this is, we're gonna kill the economy, it's gonna last on for 55 years, and the whole universe is screwed because of this. Yeah, but what were we meant to do? It's like people pretend like they know something. It's like, man, if you really do, then why didn't you used to run for government? Why don't you run for Senate? Why don't you run for the president, right? Or prime minister?
Yep.
Why don't you run for it? And if that's not what you want to do, if you really understand, just ask yourself this. If you understand something, is there a chance there's other people who understand this? Is there a chance that the thousands of psychologists in the government hires that could understand this possibility? Or the economists who actually study this shit could understand this?
Yeah, live and breathe.
Ask yourself,
spend their entire days, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, just ask yourself this, because same here. I can sit here talk all the shit I want about psychology, and but I don't claim to know as much as the people who maybe I do claim, but doesn't mean I know as much as the economists who
who have studied, who have lived the life, who've been their job, their career for a period of time, but you can still have an understanding, and you just don't go far and exceed of what you're capable of understanding, really.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And look, I may actually at times actually tell you that I'm 100% right, which I do at time to time, because I'm only human like everyone. We all are, right? We do think sometimes and that's why I was saying sometimes I feel like it's important to not be emotionally attached to your opinion. But I do think if you can think of something, I can guarantee you someone's already thought of something. If you really think, if you doubt that you're the only person, let me give you a small exercise, right? Think of a business name, and you think of a business name that you think is super exclusive and you're the only person thought of it, or a business idea, then go Google it. Trust me, I've been doing that a lot. Everyone's done everything under the sun.
So
right?
think of a name of a podcast and try and give it a go.
Podcast and get it going, right? So what I'm saying is human brains, and that's another thing, right? You're not special. I'm not special. None of us are special. We're all basically kind of like a carbon copy of each other. We do work a little bit different time to time. Doesn't matter what your religion is. You and I are pretty much the same. Like, we're not very different. So if you think that you know something that no other person does, you're probably wrong. So I think that's why conspiracy theories are just so silly. And that's why it's better to just work together and try to get through hard times.
Yeah, and it's hard. It's hard too. Like, I understand, and I was certainly at a period of my life where I understood what it was like to be deep in that world, because it becomes very addictive, and you become a part of a club in a lot of ways if you meet or know someone who's into it too, and you both kind of get along. And there's obviously been so many things, like when money's involved, there's been so many things throughout history that you could say is a quote unquote conspiracy theory, but it's not really. It's just people that are in a position of power or money being bad people and doing bad things and trying to take shortcuts, and it happens throughout life. Like, bro, even this Epstein stuff, man, at the end of the day, what that is, man, that's just someone at the absolute most, the deepest that conspiracy will go is it's someone that just wanted to be able to control powerful people. So they wanted to be able to control politics, like people do with like people do right now with money and investing in certain parties and people. So that's as far as that goes. It's not this grand plan to, out people and whatever else. At the end of the day, it's just you need something done. And if you've got some evidence of someone doing something bad, you can control that person. And it's people capitalizing on money. I'm sure there was a lot of money involved with that too. So it is easy to get caught up to it, and I definitely get caught up into it in myself, and I have to be constantly checking myself and making sure I'm actually looking at both sides of the argument. And you can get something called confirmation bias. Like, if you've thought about anything, you can look that up, you can hear that point of view all day long. Look at the other side of the view, see what kind of is there, and formulate your opinion and do what you can and move on. Just don't let it bloody overtake. And that's kind of what happens in both regards. There's your protesters who are doing it, the small percentage that are doing it for the wrong reasons, and it's the same with the small percentage of people that are conspiracy theorists, even though it seems like it's a lot of people. It's just the internet's a very powerful thing if you know how to put your message out there. But yeah, so you can look at it like that, and there definitely will be people that will argue the opposite and say that most people are silly and most people don't have common sense, and it's it's the 10% that are right and the 90 that are wrong. So who really knows? But I tend to be a little bit more open-minded and positive about that, I guess.
100%. And just before we go, and just before we move on to this next, and just before I was the comment, I'm gonna make this comment, right? This whole podcast has been actually an incredible piece of journalism. I guess those degrees at unis are paying off.
Mate, that hex debt has come back to us eventually, eh?
Because this was analytic full, if that's
word, right. That's right. And we had a good conversation. We kept both of each other honest, and we're doing it in our lives too. We're making sure that we're bringing ourself up, and we're bringing that sort of to the table, and we're not just going off and falling and slipping away, because you need that. It's easy to get caught up.
110%. And the comment I was going to make was, misinformation is one of the biggest problems in society, right? The biggest problem we have is not wars or Trump or any of those, is misinformation. The reason I say that misinformation, just if you don't realize the problem of misinformation, just look at the problem of the big problem with baby formula in Asia, right? That's because something, I think, what was it exactly? I don't remember. Once again, this could be misinformation.
Was that with it being shipped over there?
With the whole problem started with Nestle sending out their workers, their salespeople, dressed in white, but never saying that they were doctors or something like that, and suggesting that they should take up Nestle's baby formula, and obviously Nestle baby formula, and then parents just thought that was the better way to go instead of breastfeeding the kids.
Yeah.
And I actually could be wrong. I don't know all the facts here, but I remember studying this. That's how it was. And it was a big debate about it, because that was unethical to do, because they didn't know if they were doctors, because all of us, they just thought it was doctor abroad type thing situation. So misinformation is a huge problem. And because you could try to correct misinformation, it never really works, because, let's just say once the information spreads, let's say it's like arrow, right? It's like once you shoot an arrow, it'll never come back to your book. It's kind of situation. So once you say something, about misinformation, because there might be someone who never listens to the next things, just listens to this one thing, and then will go on the rest of their life believing that fact. So it's such a huge problem with misinformation. But we right now is the biggest problem with misinformation. But
and flip the coin over, I guess, and this will be my last little thought. But you always had people growing up. Old mate knew this, and I'll go ask John. He knows everything. So we have, we have an abundance of information. We have the ability to find out almost anything, which is beautiful. But then we also have the ability to see a lot of thing that looks credible, that should be credible, or isn't, and we have the ability to consume that as well. So it's a slippery old slope, mate. But that's life, isn't it? That's fucking life, brother.
100%. Well, the rule of the thumb is, if the information that you got was too convenient, know that the chances are it's probably not that credible. The more credible the information, it's a little bit harder to get, right?
Yeah.
It's really hard to
explain.
It's
sometimes hard to understand.
Hard to understand. It's harder to go read the actual paper out of the Congress, right? To actually get exact paper out of a bill. It's a lot easier to go read a news article from Channel 9, despite the fact that they may have changed some of the information to,
left some out.
Yep. What I'm saying. But if you wanted the correct information, you'd go read the actual paper of the bill. You'd go actually read the bill. Same thing with when you read a book versus listen to a podcast. You could listen to this podcast. You could get some of the information is correct, whereas some of it is our opinion in it. But if you go read a book about psychology and about politics, you get a lot more out of it. You'll be a bit more factual, but it requires more effort as well. So I think it's a rule of thumb is, if the information was too easy for you to get, know that it's probably not as credible. I think that's a good rule for me. At least that's the rule I work off. But then again, you could read a book, you could read a paper out of the a bill that is actually not the bill. Who knows, right? But the point is, generally, the chances are, if I'm going to read a bill out of the Australian government or the Bureau of Stats or whatever, right, it's going to be probably more closer to the truth than what Channel 9 provides me, or Facebook, one of my friends' Facebook posted about certain thing.
Yeah. And more often than not, and you're going to be able to figure it out. You're going to be able to see another side where, we spend most of our time on those social platforms, and that's kind of what we're, that's probably affecting a lot of it too. A lot of those conversations we're having online, and people can kind of say whatever they want. So, hey, and definitely it's, we're consuming the media too. So it's a constant evolution from both ends. But man, if that's anything else you want to add, bro? If not, mate, that was really good. That was awesome, mate. I think I really, really enjoyed that one. We got into some deep waters there, mate, but I think we came out stronger, and it's a beautiful thing.
Oh, it's such a good episode to be back at. Such a strong episode. I think I'm very excited to be back, and let's commit to a weekly episode, Lachlan, right?
Yeah,
live on the show.
Definitely. We've got to do it, man. We've got to do it, and we'll try to plug in as much as we can, even fill some of those gaps, because I think it's we can do this more often than that. We just got to give ourselves, be disciplined enough at least to commit to once a week, and just go with the flow, man. Get out of my own head in a lot of ways and just have fun and do what we do. We're loving what we're doing, so keep
absolutely
doing it.
And to be completely honest, for a very long time I've been holding back my political views on certain things.
It's fine, but man. It's good to open up in. There's some things that you were saying there that it's it's kind of on our end a little bit to not try to wrap the web too deep as well and just bounce around a point. So we can definitely go into certain topics, but we're going to have some really fun debates because we think have great opinions, and we both feel very strongly about what we believe. So yeah, it's going to be fantastic.
Good.
Right?
Well,
lovely.
This seems like the Clever Dummies podcast, also known as the political debate.
Political
debate, or also called the Immortal Technique podcast from now on.
Yeah, proudly brought to you by the Daily Telegraph.
Anyway, this is it. So it's been good to be back, and I'll let you wrap up, Lachlan, as always.
Yeah, beautiful. No, thank you, mate. Love you, dude. Episode number 13. Thank you guys for listening. If you're on Spotify, Apple Play, where else can they check us out, mate? On the website. You can obviously see us on the socials, Instagram, Facebook, at Clever Dummies.
At Clever Dummies, and look up us on Google. We're pretty we've on review side, on podcast side. We're now on Google Podcast. If you want to check out us on Google Podcast, which is available on iPhone and Android, as well as on the website, which is actually will be up later tomorrow, which is www.cleverdummiespodcast.com.au, not .au, sorry, cleverdummiespodcast.com. It's international now. So that's awesome, also up as well. So very exciting.
That's got it all on there, mate. All our socials, where you can check us out, give us some feedback. We love hearing it, even a thumbs up or a thumbs down. And yeah, let's just keep the ball rolling, eh?
Yeah, that's it. And if you got any political arguments you would like to have, please give us a shout out and we'll do a podcast together and we'll rip you a new one.
Again, we need to do that part 2 with Charlotte, mate. So let's get it down.
Yeah. Shout out to Charlotte Watson. All right, sounds good.
She'll be back, baby. All right, thanks, mate. This has been the Clever Dummies podcast. Lockie and Anik, we're out.